So this is the rough agenda for today. I want to first talk a little bit about myself. Then what is lean construction? Why is it important? How does one deploy lean design and construction? Where does lean integrate with VDC and construction technology? Why do you want to use collaborative contracts with lean? And then if you're doing this, what does the successful implementation look like? What are your expected outcomes? And what's the cost and investment of deploying lean? So I started in the lean construction community in 2010. So I studied and worked under Glenn Ballard, who's one of the founders of lean construction. Glenn is also the creator of the Last Planner system. In the early days, I was doing research at UC Berkeley on target value design, as well as on integrated project delivery. So this presentation is based on more than $10 billion of projects that I've been on. And the goal here is to condense everything that we know about lean construction into a very simple framework for executives to understand, and then for people to replicate on their own projects. I'm also part of the Project Production Institute, and that's an organization that's the goal is to spread operational science in construction. So what is lean construction? This is a very common question that everybody asks. And it's very important to answer this question because without a clear definition, we often get lost. So the way that I see lean construction is that there are 4 levels. At the base level, there's the philosophy, then there's the principles, then there's the methods, and the tools. We will go over each of these layers. The goal of lean construction is to align all 4 layers and to have a way for us to achieve the philosophies of lean. So let's get started here. So philosophies. The philosophies are the foundational goals that never change. With lean construction, there are 3 philosophies. Respect for people, maximizing value while minimizing waste, and continuous improvement. As long as you believe the 3 philosophies of lean, you're qualified to start using lean in your organization. If you don't believe in the philosophies, there's really not much we can do because then it's not right for you. The goal of lean construction is that we want to have a way to practically make these philosophies a reality on design construction projects. Lean principles. So here, I'm going to share with you 10 lean principles, and principles are general wisdom uncovered through practice. So these are ideas that we have found that when you apply them to projects, generally lead to better outcomes. So one of them would be, you want to separate waste from value. In lean, we understand that there is waste and there's value, and our goal is to determine what's waste and what's value, and then separate them in order to eliminate the waste. We want to promote flow. We want to minimize work in process. We want to reduce cycle time, increase transparency, visualize information, go to where the work takes place, share imperfect information, plan collaboratively, and prioritize learning. These are just 10 of many lean principles. The exploration of how many principles there are is its own research project that we're still working on. But the idea here is that through practice, we have identified ideas that when applied to projects generally lead to better outcomes. The methods. So with lean, we formalize our principles and philosophies into usable methods. A method is a recipe for applying lean effectively. You can think of a method as a recipe for making a cake or a pie. If you don't have a recipe, you may not be able to reproduce the same ideas over and over again. So early days of lean construction, we really were focused on what are some methods that we can create and use that will lead to better project outcomes. So these are 9 methods that we have. We have Last Planner system, TVD, CBA, set-based design, reliable promises, TAC, Scrum, visual management. And later on, I'm going to show you where these 9 sit in terms of lean capabilities and in terms of sophistication, because you're not going to start with all 9 at the same time. You have to have a roadmap of where you want to start when you're brand new, as well as where you're going to go next. So tools, you can't apply lean without good tools. And in lean, we have 3 ways of applying our methods. We can use digital, we can use analog, and we can use hybrid. Hybrid is a combination of both, right? What we have found out is that a team can use any or all these three tools in order to apply lean. And when you use technology, you want to make sure that technology improves information flow, promotes transparency, enables collaboration, reduces waste, and empower people to create more value. More and more, we're seeing most of the lean methods and tools becoming digital, and which is a good trend. But we have to understand that it has to still add the same value, and it has to be aligned with the lean pyramid that we showed earlier. So why do I show people the pyramid? Because in one quick diagram, you can see holistically the entire process for lean. And you can see, okay, which methods are we already applying? Which methods are we missing? Which principles are we applying? And how can we use the principles to improve our application? How are we applying the methods? Are we using analog, digital, or hybrid? In one clear, concise place, you can see your entire lean application, and it also gives you a roadmap to where you can improve for the future. So before I go into the practical examples and also data from projects, I wanted to stop here a little bit just for some short Q&A. The idea here is that we start with what is lean construction and with the philosophies, because without philosophy, it is very hard for us to improve the project. So we're going to stay here for a few minutes for questions, and feel free to ask questions in the chat. Does anybody have a question, or do you generally agree with what we said so far?
So far, so good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Betty. Anyone else? We also heard about Scrum linked to Agile. Yes, so Scrum is one of the methods from Agile, but we have been able to use it successfully in construction. So I listed it as one of the methods because I have seen evidence of it being used very well. Next question from Michael. How is respect for people reflected during construction? Well, with Lean, you want respect for people to be applied throughout everything that you do. Because that's our foundational philosophy. Not all projects have a respect for people. Some projects are applying a lean as methods. So they apply last planner system, they apply some of the like TAC 5S, and they apply the tools. But if you don't connect it to the philosophy, there is no motivation to improve. Okay, next question is lean and agile? So lean and agile are adjacent to each other. Agile comes from software engineering, and Scrum comes from software engineering. Lean comes from various places, right? There's lean manufacturing, there's Toyota production system, there's lean construction. These are very similar, but there's slight nuances. The main thing about lean is that all the disciplines of lean share the same philosophy, and they share similar principles. But the methods and tools you use for how you build software is different from how you would build a building. And the methods and tools have to be adaptable to the project environment, to the local culture, and to what you're working on. So we're stressing that at the philosophy level, it's very stable and rigid, while at the tools and methods level, it has to be very flexible because you have to adapt to all the conditions of projects that you have out there. Okay, any more questions, or we can continue? Okay, another question. Will you say lean tools can or need to be practiced by workers in all levels of project team, by staff and workers at even the level of installer and workers? Yes, you can get a lot of benefits, and we're going to see some examples of lean on projects, and it'll give you a general idea about where the opportunities are. So there's a different set of lean that upper management needs to know. There's a different set of lean that middle management needs to know. There's a different set of lean that the workers need to know. It's very important to separate these things. And also, what you would apply as a general contractor would be different from what you would apply as a mechanical trade. and it'll be very different from what you would apply as an architect. So we're teaching you the entire system, but there's going to be a subset that each person would use. But very good question. Okay, let's continue. So first, we want to say, okay, if we apply all these things, like these things back here look good, they sound nice. But if we apply all these things, what do we actually get? Is it actually worth it for us to do it? So this is what a successful lean implementation looks like. So on the left side, what you know is that in construction, in traditional design bid build, the tendency is that the project cost increases over time. If we apply lean, and in particular target value design, we're able to decrease the cost over time. And these two diagrams come from two projects. The diagram in the left bottom, that came from a project that finished 15 years ago. The project on the right side is an ongoing project. So this team started the initial project at $761 million. And over 2 years of TVD, they reduced it down to 643. So there was an 18% savings in 24 months. And the last update to this cost was August 2024. So this is very recent. So a successful lean implementation is able to decrease costs during design and maintain that savings even into construction. So that's really what our goal is. Our goal is to decrease cost in design and also maintain that savings, right? So how do we actually do that? What we want to do is our goal is to decrease costs. And in order to do this, we are going to do a few things that are different from what most of the industry and most of the world is actually doing. We're going to do early onboarding. We're going to have collaborative contracts. We're going to use big room and co-location. We're going to use continuous cost estimating, and we're going to use BIM and VDC. So collaborative contracts. So around the world, there's a trend towards more collaborative contracts. So the least collaborative contract would be design bid build. The most collaborative would be IPD. What we're suggesting is that you want to move towards either progressive design build or IPD in order to get the most benefits from lean, because lean requires collaboration and the world is moving towards collaboration because owners have found out that as projects become more complex, they're not going to get much value doing design bid build. So they're transitioning into CM at risk, and ultimately they're transitioning to progressive design build and IPD. And you're going to see this natural transition. So this is the Bay Area in the last like 20 years. 20 years ago, most projects were design bid build. Then there's a transition towards CM at risk. And now the move is towards design build and progressive design build. So the evolution of project delivery is that we are finding that we're getting more value on complex projects by being more collaborative. And the one that we advocate for, progressive design build and IPD. And for today, just know the words. We will actually go in depth into collaborative contracts in a future webinar. So for now, just be aware of this. If you've already worked on these projects, great. If you have not heard about these words yet, we're going to break it down in a future webinar to really share what collaborative contracts mean and what's the nuanced difference between these two. There is a very slight difference that is very important. But for now, just understand that we're trying to enable collaboration and alignment of incentives. So why would an owner use collaborative contracts, right? So the slowest way to delivering a project and the worst way to delivering a project is design bid build, because you're finishing the entire design as much as you can finish, right? Before you're bidding it for construction and then you're commissioning it. So it's going to take you the longest duration. Most owners are interested in lean IPD because you onboard people early, you work through collaborative design process, and you shorten the project duration. For many owners who have sophisticated buildings like data centers, nuclear, hospitals, having the asset delivered earlier is actually more valuable for them than the cost savings. And for more and more owners building more sophisticated things, earlier use of the asset is actually more important than the cost savings. Sometimes they're willing to pay you more money if you can deliver faster for them. Same thing with progressive design build. We use this because we're trying to decrease the project duration, but we're also getting other benefits in addition to a reduced schedule. But for owners, reduced schedule is their primary benefit of using collaborative contracts and also getting what the ultimate one at the end of the project. So one of the things that we do advocate for is co-location big rooms. This is a physical space where people do the work and where we support TBD and VDC. It's very hard to do VDC and very hard to do TBD unless you have a team co-located in the same space. Because if it takes you 2 weeks to answer a question, to answer an RFI, you don't have enough time or enough data bandwidth to have good, reliable models for costing as well as for constructability. So things like TBD and VDC require you to have a big room. In a lot of projects, they put trailers next to each other, but trailers are not the same as a big room because when you have individual trailers, people stay in their own siloed office. They don't want to come out and talk to each other. So you want to have a place where people can communicate and work together. This is the last planner system. So we're not going to go too deep into this today, but in the next webinar, I'll go deep into what is last planner system, how do you apply it? And we had a question earlier about, do the people, the workers need to use Lean? The answer is absolutely. So one of the easiest way to improve productivity on a project is to plan better. Last planner system allows us to plan collaboratively and plan visually. And we share the information visually in the big room as well as in the field. And the teams had their morning meetings at the information site. So they understand what they're doing, where they're going, and they're able to ask questions on the information. So we're going to talk about this in the next session, but just be aware that this is a very foundational method for Lean and one of the very first things that people would apply. So TAC, planning control. The webinar after last planner system, we'll talk about TAC planning control. Basically, TAC is a more advanced system for production planning and control. The idea is that in addition to working together collaboratively to create a visual plan and to create one plan for the project, what we're doing is that we're also incorporating the locations. So we're creating a consistent rhythm and beat amongst the rooms to create more reliable workflow between the trades. And the goal of TAC is that if you take the building and you organize it by rooms and have one trade in one space at a time, then nobody's colliding with each other. There's no trade stacking, and everybody's can be as productive as they can. This allows you to have a higher reliability of your project schedule, and you also know when you're going to finish early into your project. So many teams are integrating TAC with last planner system. And one of the goals of planning is that you want to have one plan that's transparent for the entire project, for all the durations. So this is a team that took the phases. So there's 8 phases of the project. They took 8 phases, and within each phase, they created their detailed planning and detail to a level that they need at that time, right? So you have a general understanding of your milestones, and you have a general understanding of what's happening inside. But as you go through each phase, you actually create your own mini plans. So this is a very good example of last planner plus TAC that a team has to use. 5S in visual management. So a project has a lot of information, and people are visual. The goal of Lean in the very beginning is to just make the information visual for people to understand. Because if you walk into a project site and you don't understand the information, the team probably doesn't either. So you want to make your information transparent and visible to the team in the location that they meet. We also want to make sure that we don't clog up the site. We don't have things that are not necessary for the project, right? So 5Sing is a lean manufacturing exercise where we're identifying what we need to use and what we don't need. And what we don't need, we eliminate from the project in order to create a cleaner, safer, and easier to work job site. So this is something that the workers would need to participate in to make this happen. Waste walks. So as you're creating a production system through Last Planner and through TAC, and you have one trade in one room at a time, what you're able to do is create stability in production. What does that mean? Once you have stability in production, you can actually measure productivity of the workers. You can actually do time studies and put a camera out in front of the workers and just observe them do a few cycles of work. From the work that they're doing, you can identify what is value, what is waste, and you can eliminate the waste. And for work that's a little bit more complicated, you can also do a value stream mapping to understand, okay, where does the material start entering the site, and where does it end at the end of the work, right? So using value stream mapping, you can also find opportunities for improvement. But this happens after we implement the last planner system and after we implement TAC. And when you apply this, you actually find out that only about 15 to 20% of the work is actually value. 60 to 80% is actually waste. So there's actually a lot more waste than people realize. But until they create a stable system, until they can actually see the waste for themselves, it's very hard to understand. Because most projects at the end of the day finish, at the end of the project is done. But your waste is not in whether it's done or not. It's how people are working and installing the work. So in the United States, we have a problem attracting and retaining good workers, whether it's people in the field, whether it's people in the office. But what I say is that most projects around the world, and even in the United States, it feels like you're going to war, right? We want to build a place where people want to go to work, where people are proud to tell their family and friends and parents where they work. We don't want to make them go to a place that looks like you're using the lowest quality chairs, lowest quality table, and there's junk everywhere, because that doesn't really attract the people that we want to keep in this industry. And right now, there's a lot of people that feel like they're going to war every single day, because every single day feels like a fight. And one of the ways that we can solve this is actually through lean and TBD, where you saw that graph of decreasing costs over time. Because if you don't have TBD, you're actually optimizing for the cheapest first cost, not the true cost of the project. So if you don't have a metric or a way to show that you're saving money by doing more humane things for people, you will have the cheapest bathrooms, low tech, not a fully coordinated model, because nobody pays enough money for the model. You have manual and low productivity labor, you have siloed trailers, and you have job sites with the cheapest chairs and tables. When you apply TBD and you apply lean and you apply all these concepts that we have, it provides a justification for better investment, because you can see a return of investment into it. So oftentimes when you have projects that are using lean, IPD, progressive design build, TBD, you're going to see humane restrooms on site, better BIM and VDC models, because the team is financially aligned and incentivized to create good models. You're going to see better technology. You're going to see industrialized construction, because now the team understands what they're building and it can do offsite prefab. You're going to see co-location. You're going to see robots and innovation. And these are things that we want the industry to have. And these are things that we know deep down that would benefit the team, but without having a clear metric on how it's saving money or why we're doing these things for the betterment of the project, it's hard to convince an owner to invest the money upfront in order to do these things. So what kind of results can you get? So again, your results vary, right? So the project on the left was completed in 2009, 2010, about 15 years ago, right? And this team was able to use TBD and reduce the cost by about 15%. The project on the right is a current project that's at UCSF, and it's using progressive design build with TBD, and they're able to reduce the cost by 18%. So your results will vary, but this is what we've been able to see from projects. We see that most projects generally can get about 10 to 20% reduction in costs through lean and TBD. And most projects can get 10 to 25% faster with the application of these lean methods. But again, teams take time to learn how to apply all these methods, and it does take a lot of time to understand how to do these things well. So it's a journey and it's a skill that people learn over time. It's not something that you say, okay, I saw these 9 methods, I saw these principles, we're going to do it tomorrow. There is a process to learning and iterating and putting these things into place. But with lean construction, we don't want to silo ourselves, right? We don't think that lean design construction methods, philosophy, principles, and tools would solve everything. That's not a good view of the world, right? What we're seeing is that we want to start with respect for people, and we want to combine lean design construction with BIM and VDC and construction technology innovation, because all these three sides are very important for improving project performance. And really the key is that what are we doing that improves project performance in a way that also respects people, in a way that also creates a more humane job site. So a lot of people talk about different initiatives. Could be lean, it could be BIM, it could be VDC, it could be innovation, it could be construction technology, last planner tech. The way that I see is that if you want to really improve projects holistically and long term, you have to optimize for the whole entire project, the entire animal. You're not going to optimize for one company, one scope, or one stakeholder. You have to think about this as improving one project by having one price, one plan, and one team. And this is the only way that works, because otherwise you have various improvement initiatives and opportunities that works on one project but doesn't work on another project, does not work on another project. The way you want to do is that you have to keep your principles and philosophies consistent while adapting the implementation and tools to the project itself. And by saying, does this make sense? Do these things make sense? And are we actually getting value out of this? This is why we encourage people to see projects and see examples for themselves to understand how someone else is approaching the problem. It may not be the same project as your project, but it'll give you some inspiration for you to apply. And also you're learning from all the R&D, all the ideas that they're trying. So regardless of where they are, you're still going to learn a lot to bring back to your own projects. So the important thing about lean construction, and this is something that a lot of people make the mistake on, is that they believe that everything is rigid. That's not true. The philosophy is rigid. The principles are somewhat rigid, but the methods and tools have to be very adaptable. Because if you don't have those adaptable, you cannot use them on all kinds of projects, all sizes of projects, all industries at construction service. And with lean, you have to have a healthy balance of empirical as well as philosophical thinking. Without empirical application of ideas, all you're doing is talking about ideas that may or may not work. You have to go out there and collect the data. And ideally, you want data to be so simple, so easy, and so consistent that everybody that sees the data understands the data. And it has to be so simple that it makes sense for everybody on why they're doing these things, right? So we have to have a balance of empirical, because ideas are good, you still got to apply them. But you have to have a philosophy, because without a philosophy, there is no motivation and there's also no direction for how to make continuous improvement. With lean, we have three philosophies: respect for people, maximizing value while minimizing waste, and continuous improvement. Those are our guiding philosophies in order to allow us to look for principles and methods and tools that allow us to achieve those philosophies. So really with lean, we are staying true to the philosophy, and we're looking and testing ideas that allow us to make those philosophies practical in the real world. And again, it has to be practical. Otherwise, if it's not practical, no one will do it. So lean capability. So earlier on, I gave you a list of like 9 lean methods, right? So there's really a skill level in terms of people's ability to do these things, right? So when you're very beginning, if you haven't applied lean, this is your first webinar, this is the first time you heard about any of these concepts, first time you've seen any of these things, I would start with last planner system, I would start with 5S, and I would start with visual management. As you create some stability there, you can move on to TAC, reliable promises, and waste walks. The reason why I start with these first is that these can be applied in any project, in design or in construction, and they can be applied in any contractual system. You can have design bid bill, you have CM at risk, you have design bill, you have IPD, you can apply all these in any project. To the far right are the more advanced methods: target value delivery, choosing by advantages, set-based design. The reason why these are more advanced is that it requires you to have a strong grasp of the basics first, and also it requires you to have a collaborative contract. So in the middle, the prerequisite for the advanced things are collaborative contracts, such as IPD, Progressive Design Bill, and to have an owner invest in the big room. If you don't have the big room and a collaborative contract, you can't do the things on the right. A lot of times owners are asking for all the things here, but they're not willing to invest in the big room, and you can't do that. Okay, so there's different ways of deploying lean, right? So really for 99% of projects, you have three options. You have DIY, you can have somebody train you, you have group coaching, workshops, you can pay someone an hour or by the day to help you implement it. These will generally work for things like Last Planner, 5S, visual management, the very beginning things. But as it becomes more complex, where you're touching the realms of IPD, Progressive Design Bill, TBD, you would probably need somebody to be part of the team because there's a lot of mistakes you can make if you're not aware of what the mistakes are. But we're gonna train you into as many of these ideas as we can over the next 6 webinars. But just be aware that we're gonna, slowly as we teach the methods, you'll understand why they belong where, right? But early on, my recommendation is go to Lean Construction blog, read about the topics that you're interested in, or from this list right here. We have it organized into every single topic area, and you can find most ideas from there and start with DIY first, get some results, and then decide on what you want to do next. And the expected outcomes for Lean is that this is what we expected to happen. Baseline of a project is not doing Lean. The cost will be 10 to 20% less. And we can show that with TBD. And you saw that in the graph. Schedule will be 10 to 25% faster. But more importantly, we get safer projects. We get better morale. We get higher engagement. We get customer satisfaction, higher quality products that aligns with the business objectives of the customer. And they're getting exactly what they want. The reason why a customer builds something is that they cannot buy something. And if they could buy it, they would have already bought it in the market. The reason why they build these custom projects is because their use case is so particular and so complex and so aligned with their business objectives that they need to have that data center, that nuclear power plant. They need to have that oil and gas facility. They need to have that hospital because they're not going to generate revenue unless they have those things. And many owners understand their business objectives. The design and construction projects are a means of achieving those objectives. Okay, so this is some people ask, like, what does results as a service looks like? This is just a rough sketch, just from the people that I know working in this. So if you need somebody to do the whole thing for you, you'll be hiring a lean construction firm, right? So a typical management fee for construction management is about 5%. Most of the people that do this as results as a service, they charge 0.3 to 0.7% of the project. So basically the cost is not to a general contractor. The only person that would actually pay for this is actually the owner itself on $1 billion plus project. So typically an owner would pay $3 to $7 million per billion, but in return they're expecting $100 to $150 million in savings. So they're expecting a 25 times return on the investment. But this is only for capital projects over $1 billion, where there's not an easy way of the team learning all these methods on their own in time. So what I encourage you to do is that we did share some ideas. We have some more webinars coming up, but I don't want you to just believe something in a presentation, right? So my offer to you is that if you want to see a project or two in the Bay Area that's doing this for more than 30 years, we're happy to have you come and visit and see the project for yourself, see the big room, see the project that's doing Last Planner, see the project that's doing TAC, talk to the people working on these projects, and see these concepts for yourself. Because when you hear these concepts, you may or may not believe them, but when you see it for yourself, to me, that's really the engagement and learning you need to have. And especially when you have projects that are bigger, like a few $100 million, a few $1 billion, that would make sense for the team and the owner to be educated and see these projects for themselves. And then it's because a lot of design construction, people talk about their ideas are better. people said, I have a better method, I have a better way of doing things. What I would say is the only way to know if it's better or not is to just visit a project that's live, going on right now, and hearing what they're talking about, seeing how organized it is or disorganized it is, seeing what they're actually doing. And so in order to improve the product, we have to also improve the process, and you also have to improve the organization. How are these projects organized? What's the process that they're using? As in addition to technology, right? So these are all things that are important to improve the project, but the only way to know if something is true or not is to see it for yourself. And a lot of times in design construction, people write papers about projects that are already finished. They write papers about disasters in different various industries of projects being overrun or behind schedule. But what happens is that none of those cases actually can help you improve your project. The only way to improve your project is to see a project live. The only way to like improve your body is to study a live person. You can't study a dead person and figure out what's wrong, right? So my encouragement is, if this is something that you're interested in, and also you have a project that's important enough, we're happy to get you a project or two in the Bay Area for you to see and talk to the team and learn for yourself. Again, these are some of the people that I work with. We have various experts in various different parts of Lean. So what we found out is that one person cannot understand or do every single thing in Lean. We have found out that you really need to have like a group that works together to deliver these complex projects, because the knowledge of all 9 methods is beyond the capability of any person to really be an expert in. So generally people specialize in 1 to 3 methods, and they work together to improve and work together. Okay, so anyways, this is the end of the first webinar. Happy to take any questions, as many questions as you want. And also the future webinars will be introduction to Last Planner System. So today we only went high level. What does Lean look like? What is it? What is the definitions? And what outcomes are you expecting? And what kind of things you have to put together? But next time we're going to talk about what is the Last Planner System and how do you actually apply it on a project. Then we talk about task planning and control. Then we're going to have a deep dive into target value delivery, which is where we get the downward trend curve in design phase. We're going to talk about collaborative contracts, including IPD and progressive design build, how they support Lean and the differences between the two. And finally, we talk about the history and development of Lean, because Lean construction has been around for more than 30 years. And we want to show you the timeline of all these methods and ideas being developed over time, so that you can see that it is an evolving industry, evolving knowledge base, and it's not something that we just made up randomly out of nowhere, right? And it takes time for us to create and validate these methods. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have. Please type them into the chat. And yeah. Okay, so I have from our friend from Singapore. How would you, so Tech, are you an owner? You're from the Singapore airport, right? Are you the owner that's looking to hire
Hi.
people?
Sorry,
Yes.
I thought it would be quicker to just
Yeah.
respond by voice.
Yeah.
So I actually work for the government. I'm
Okay.
the deputy CEO at the Building and Construction Authority in Singapore. Actually, one of my colleagues is on the call, Tun. But we are basically responsible for the built environment sector in Singapore. Fundamentally, we are trying to transform it, get it to a much more productive space, make sure that everybody is making healthy margins, profits, making sure that we're able to attract people in the industry. So we don't have any of our own projects, but we work very closely with all our other government departments, which are delivering real projects, airport projects, private sector projects as well. And we engage all the stakeholders in the supply chain, the contractors, the consultants too. Yeah, so we are coming from that perspective to develop
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay. So your question is, how do you identify the firms that are ready to be starting the Lean
Yeah,
journey? I think
exactly.
that
Because
the most important thing is that if somebody is ready to do Lean, you should see evidence of it in their current project delivery. So typically a company that's interested in Lean is already investing in VDC, investing in innovation, trying to do things that are different than just cookie cutter, right? But they also have a characteristics of deeply caring about their workers and having respect for people. So
Yep.
one way I look for is that, are they doing some of the ingredients that you're seeing here already? And also, do you see that their company culture is aligned with the three philosophies of lean. And
Yep.
if so, those will be your best bet to start with.
What about for the clients? The contractors, I think all of that applies, and we do see that in various contractors in Singapore. But then the clients, the developers, I think that's also you need to have them to be in, at the table and play ball. So how would you
Yes.
what's your experience there?
So the clients, basically, clients are a little tricky because clients they either believe in the philosophy or they don't believe in philosophy.
Yep.
Some of the clients are just, they want it as cheap as possible. One thing, they
Mhm.
don't care to grind their supply chain down, right? So
Mhm.
the owner the clients that benefit the most from lean is the repeat builders, a
Yep.
client who builds often and is within their business model, like Singapore airports, right?
Mhm.
It's within the business model to spend a few hundred million to a few billion dollars a year on capital programs. So
Yep.
SFO spends about 1 billion a year on capital programs,
Yep.
and they realize that they cannot think about it at one project at a time or cannot think about it 1 year at a time. They had to
Yep.
look at it from a 10-year span, and then they had to choose. In the beginning, an owner that's not aware of lean is
Yep.
still hiring people based on price. But
Mhm.
what you're going to find out when we get to collaborative contracts is that when you do IPD or you do progressive design bill, you're choosing the team based on qualifications. And there may not be any price or any design when you first choose the team, right? Because you're working with them to develop the design. So most owners, you know, they still bid out the work. So they kind of get, sometimes the lowest bidder, sometimes not the lowest bidder, very close to the lowest bidder, but they don't consciously develop the supply chain. So they might have
Yep.
10 general contractors they work with. The owners that are doing lean, like SFO, they generally narrow down their supply chain to 3 to 4 general contractors. So small projects they'll give to everybody, right? Because they're trying to test to see who's actually has the best performance. But longer term, an owner found out that they want to invest in the supply chain as much as the supply chain is investing in them.
Yep.
And you have to give your best performing teams and projects more work. Otherwise, there's no incentive for them to do better work.
Yep.
So somebody works hard and they actually deliver what you wanted. Um, SFO would give them a project. So I'll give you an example, right? So Terminal 1, Harvey Milk was completed with Gensler and Hensel Phelps. Terminal 3, the airport is hiring Turner, but for the next major upgrade, their preferred one is going to be back to Hensel Phelps because
Mm.
they want to reward the contractors that are doing well. And the
Yep.
only way to reward contractors that are doing well is to have clear performance indicators like what we have here, because
Yep.
then you can clearly see who's doing well and who's not doing well. Without lean and without TVD, it's
You can
generally
measure that.
very hard to tell. And
Yep.
now it's easier to tell. Now that it's easier to tell, you can actually invest the money where you're getting a return, and then everybody wins.
Yep. Thanks for the perspective. Yeah, those are the issues we're grappling with over here, and maybe we'll follow up with you
Mhm.
separately. Hope
Yeah,
hope
yeah,
that question was helpful for everybody as well to identify the
no, no,
clients to work for.
but you're early, so
Yep.
you really have to come out here and see SFO. I think that's the closest to what you're building,
Yep.
and SFO is using progressive design bill, and you had to see UCSF as well,
Yep.
because both of them are public institutions, and I think that's important
Yeah.
to have a public perspective.
Yeah. We heard about
Okay.
Sutter Health as well, and we're quite keen even on
Yeah,
private
Sutter
sector.
House. Yeah, a tool
Yeah.
is here. A tool is from
Right.
DPR to work on Sutter House.
Yep.
So Sutter
Thank
House
you.
is good. Um, Sutter House is private, but I was
That's
thinking
fine.
you start with public first. But
Hmm.
you're here for a few days.
Yep.
We can try to get you three projects to visit, and it
Yep.
could be UCSF, an SFO, and a Sutter Health project. That way, you see the full perspective.
Yep. Great. Thanks so much in advance. Yep. Maybe I'll turn over the time to everybody else. Thank you.
Okay, so next question is from Jung. He says, can you name some AIA or other contract forms which are most suitable for lean? So for lean construction, we actually create our own contracts. The contract that most of the IPD team use is a modified version of the integrated form of agreement. The IFOA was created in 2005 for Sutter House, who started IPD because the past delivery methods weren't working for them, and they had a lot of projects coming up that they needed to build on time. We also have some standard contracts like Consensus Docs 300 and a Consensus Docs series that builds upon the IFOA. And we also have progressive design build contracts, which is through DBIA. But none of the AIA contracts, as far as I know, actually support lean. They have their own, um, contracts that look like it supports lean, but not really. So, okay, next question. Can you tell the role of BIM when applying lean? So, a tool from DPR is here, but he would probably be the best one to tell you about this, right? But to me, BIM VDC is very important for lean because the projects are so complicated now, so complex, right? And also you want to prefab things. You also have very precise concrete pours, very precise walls, very precise things to fit. Anytime you prefabricate, your precision has to go up. So we need to have a good coordinated BIM model, and we also need to have a financial incentive to have good BIM models. So a lot of general contractors like the CM at risk model because they're early into the project and they can bill for BIM and VDC services, right? But because the owner does not invest nearly enough in CM at risk, the models are generally not as good as it can be. And when there's an alignment of incentives for the entire project and all the trades and all the partners and all the owners, architects, contractors come together and in a co-located space, there is a higher likely that you're going to have better BIM models. So BIM, VEC, very important. I don't think you can do it for anything over $100 million because anything over $100 million, you're going to need BIM. For small projects that are less than $100 million in the United States, like 50 million, 20 million, when you're doing multifamily projects or you're doing single family houses, there's no BIM there. Everything is in 2D drawings. So the application of lean would be very different for a multifamily unit that's $20 million or $50 million versus a hospital that's $4 billion versus an airport terminal that's $2 billion. So we still have to adapt BIM and lean to all cases. And the key is to adapt them. Okay, next question is from Stephanie from Australia. What is the journey and how long does it take a client to get to mature IPD if they are not currently using it, and the best way to start? Maturity is a tricky question because some of these people have been doing IPD. Sutter House has been doing IPD since 2005. UCSF has been doing, this is their first IPD project. I would say a few decades and a few projects. So your first project is always your successful project because you don't know anything. So you're gonna spend a lot of time and money and energy training everybody, make sure everybody understands the new processes, making sure everybody's co-located, making sure that your contracts are good. Your second project always goes terribly because you basically did a lot of good things to prepare for the first project that you think that everybody knows how to do it. So a lot of times we see is that the second IPD project goes terribly for everybody because the owner says, we're hiring the same companies, the same people. You guys should already know how to do this. We paid for training last time. You're paying for training this time. And then nobody pays for training and then nobody pays for alignment. So usually the first one is very successful. The second one, they're going to take a hit because they don't actually do the things that led them to be successful in the first place. And then they're going to wander around a few projects until they try different things. And then they go back to full IPD. So it's a journey and it's a very common for people to make the mistake on the second project. Next question is BIM and VEC are commonly adopted. As a start, which of the lean methods do you recommend to get quick buy-in? Okay, so if you have BIM and VEC, great. Actually, a lot of the things that you need, like co-location, should be built in because BIM and VEC require ICE session, requires integrated concurrent engineering. In terms of lean, right? If you're brand new to lean and on any project, I would start with the first tier, last planner, 5S, visual management. That's the easiest to start. And if you have a more sophisticated team, I'll do TAC and I'll do waste walks and I'll do reliable promises. That would be because there's not much resistance to these things. And there's not a prerequisite to getting a collaborative contracts. But let's say that you're on the design build project progressive design build project, or IPD project, right? Then you should be doing TBD. Because you're not doing TBD on those projects, you're actually wasting time and money, because you can just take those projects and be better coordinated and have more constructability reviews and make sure that the things are in place for better construction, right? But really the main benefit of lean is going to be TBD. So um depends on what contracts you have and where the team is currently at, right? So if the team is already in construction on a design bid build project, my recommendation is to start with 5S, last planner, visual management. But if you're brand new, you're starting something new that's coming up, I would actually spend the time to study and learn how to do collaborative contracts and be able to set up the whole system. So your opportunities depends on the project size, and also depends on where you are right now. And also what project are you having coming up? I'll give you an example, right? So I'm giving a presentation to the Port of Los Angeles in a few weeks. And the Port of Los Angeles has their very first well, they have a $2 billion project coming up at the end of the year, and they want to use progressive design build because they heard that it's actually a thing that they should be doing. They told me that in the past they've done design build, but their design build project was actually worse off than their design bid build. So they wanted to know why. And I had to explain to them that if you just because you have a design builder is actually flawed, because you're giving the design builder the project very early without at the very beginning you're giving them a project and they're giving you a price. That actually can lead to a lot of problems. With progressive design build, the owner is involved in the validation process and involved in the TBD process. And only when the target cost is hit does the owner turn it over to the team to do construction. So progressive design build fixes some of the flaws of design build. The design build itself is 50-50. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not great. And if it's 50-50, it doesn't really benefit the industry very much. We want something that no matter what you do and what situation you use it in, it'll always give you better results than the basis. Your results would vary based on your skill and your capabilities of applying it, but that's okay. But we always want things that there's no negative risks involved. Okay, any more questions? Go ahead and write more questions. I can take as many questions as you have. Okay, so great. I have a question here from Juan. Can lean construction be initiated only by the owner? Can it be implemented independent within a contractor management system? Not every project applies lean construction in the first place, especially government-funded projects, which have specific legislative governing design, bid, construct process. So the best way to get lean is have the owner involved. The best way to train owners is to do this type of webinar series, because really this is designed to educate an owner to what is lean so that they can understand it and they can properly invest in it. But let's say you're not an owner, you're a general contractor, right? Then you have to, you can still apply last planner, 5S, visual management, tech, reliable promises, waste walks. These are things that you can apply as a general contractor. But the things on the right, the TBD, the IPD, progressive design build, that requires owner, architect, engineer involvement. So that's why it's a much more difficult. So what we found out is that if you're in a design bid build project, right? And most likely if you're in a design bid build project, you're in the construction phase only. Then you should apply the methods of lean that apply to the construction phase, which are the ones on the left side. The parts that's more difficult, more sophisticated, is applying lean in design phase, which is the ones on the right. Design is much more complex than construction because people have to have many, many projects in order to understand what is the right behavior and what is the right things to do in the design phase. And if they don't know what those right things are, they may think that they're making progress, but the mistakes that they're making today are not going to come to them until 5 years later. And sometimes they're not even there until when the mistakes happen. So when you're talking about choosing by advantages, set-based design, TVD, these are things where you have to have multiple cycles of project experience in order for you to understand what you're doing today and how it's going to affect you in the future. Most of the teams, when they get into an IPD project and in a big room, They basically act similar to traditional, except they have more collaboration. So they detail better. They're gonna have better BIM coordination. They're gonna have, they're gonna resolve problems earlier. But what they're doing is they're doing better than what they've done before, but they're not doing to the standard that you can do it on the highest performing projects. So it depends on your benchmark of standards too, right? So if your standards are based on design bill, based on CM at risk, based on design bid bill, then you may have a different understanding about what you can achieve with lean versus if you actually seen enough IPD projects that do TBD well. Okay, so next question is from Stephanie. Is reliable promise a separate method from LPS or refinement LPS? So reliable promises comes separately. Well, reliable promises is not LPS, right? So within LPS, there is the concept of reliable promises, but let me go back to the all the methods, right? Okay, so reliable promises comes from language action perspective. This is the work from Fernando Flores. And what I found out is that most teams that apply last planner system only talk about reliable promises in terms of words I say, words I don't say. What is a reliable promise? How to keep reliable promises, right? But that's actually only a fraction of what Fernando Flores' work is. Because under reliable promises, he also has language action perspective. He also has moods. He has a lot of other things that are missing from last planner. So I keep it separate because what I would say is that once you apply the last planner system, once you apply all the components of last planner system in your project, there's a qualitative way of improving the implementation. So a lot of people just take last planner, TBD as a checklist. What's the 10 things that are components of last planner system? Are we doing those things? Yes, 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 we're good. That doesn't actually give you the full results. What you want to say is what's first, qualitatively, are we putting in all the components of last planner system? And then how well are we having those conversations? How well are we understanding moods? How well are we understanding if this is a promise or not a promise? How well are we able to keep our promises? So there is a qualitative approach to lean, which is why you can't just checklist it. Anyone that tries to checklist things, it never works out well for them. So it's not a refinement. It comes a lot of these ideas, like choosing by advantages, set-based design, Scrum, even TAC, and visual management comes from other industries, and we adopted it into lean construction, and I put it into the lean construction value and knowledge, mainly because these are the things that we found that worked. And if there's more things, more methods that we find that work from other parts of the world, add them in here. So again, this is a very flexible framework, right? The goal is that this is my list of methods and my list of principles. My philosophies don't change, right? But you should be using this concept to really guide your own implementation and think about how you're applying it. Okay, next one is Jung. Can you organize a virtual site visit to site applying in Bay Area? Many cannot go to by ourselves. The answer is maybe, and we currently have a filmmaker filming one of the projects, UCS at Parnassus. So he's filming every single month there as the project progresses. And he's creating short 10 and 15-minute episodes of the project team. So we're trying to capture the dynamics of what's happening on a 500 people big room for the world to see. So you'll see examples of that and capture what happens on the job site, what happens in the supply chain, what happens with the prefab and with the VDC models. So you'll see a lot of those elements in that. I think that that's coming out probably like 3 to 4 months from now, but that will be the easiest way for you to like see this for yourself. You can't travel. But again, a lot of times, if you don't have a project big enough, there's not a need to travel. But let's say you have a $500 million project or $1 billion project, $2 billion project, then there's a need to travel. Because at a certain scale and scope and size, it'll be irresponsible not to go and visit and learn. So but if you're not at the point there yet, my suggestion is just to start with the things you can do yourself, like the last planner system and visual management. Okay, I got this question from Michael. What are the biggest barriers to implementing lean construction in traditional construction projects? How do you overcome? The biggest barrier that I found out is that a lot of times people say that people are resistant to lean. That's actually not true for what I found. What I found is that most people have the wrong information on lean construction. So the first thing is, as long as people are interested in learning and they want to communicate and they believe in the three philosophies of lean, they have the prerequisites for you to teach them lean. They're trying to do basically the same things. They just don't have a framework. They don't have methods. They don't have principles. They don't have examples that they can follow. But as long as they have the three philosophies and they're trying to be innovative and they're trying to improve the way they work and they're trying to work together, they are ready. A big barrier to lean construction has always been a misunderstanding, because the word lean construction, the word Lean Six Sigma, the word agile, the word various words, lean manufacturing sound very similar, but they're different concepts. And a lot of times when people hear one thing, they may think that that thing is the thing that is what it means, but it's actually not true. So what we're trying to do with this is also a lot of times when people present on lean construction, they don't actually show examples or they don't show empirical information. So they kind of show some theory, but to me that doesn't actually help anybody, because you have to see examples from projects and you have to actually see exhibits and you have to see pictures of people doing these things. We don't want, in lean construction, we never want anybody to be the guinea pig. We don't want you to be the first one to do something experimental that will not work. We want you to have the lowest risk possible in applying these things. And we want you to apply the things that have already worked for other people. Only the projects that are already stable, have been doing TVD and IPD for years, there should be the one that should be experimental. But for most people, it's understanding what actually works and why does it work and do you want to do these things. And I would say 80% of people plus are not actually that resistant to lean. They're resistant to things that don't work. And a lot of times the training for lean is very theoretical or not very practical. So then they don't trust their lives on something that they don't know if it works or not. So what I would say is that, let's say someone's building a multifamily home, right? You want to show them examples from other people who've done lean on multifamily homes. If someone's building a nuclear project, you want to show up example of someone else working on a nuclear project. Hospital, same thing. Airport, same thing. Because people really don't have the ability to think abstractly from industry to industry and from project to project. What we want to do is show something that's as closer to what they understand as possible, and then have them work through that example.